Hello, and welcome to this episode of Living in Harmony with the Real World. My name is Gary Edward Goodall, psychologist, psychotherapist. Now I refer to myself as the therapist. I don't know if that makes any sense to anyone. And today I want to talk to you about one of my interesting subjects. And to do that, I'm going to need what I have now called my human pyramid. So, if we can have the human pyramid, please, Mr. Bibliothèque. That should be bookcase, but I get mixed up with the English. As you might notice, we start off with what we call Maslow's triangle, with his triangle or pyramids of needs. Then we have the three levels of our bodies, which is our body, our emotions, and our mind, which are also subjects in themselves. We have the system of the seven major chakras, which you will notice. And finally, we have wants, needs, and desires. Wants, needs, and desires, a very interesting subject. First of all, what most people don't realize is that we function not as a single entity, but we function more as a committee. Those that you are fans of Pixar's Inside Out, with all the little emotions that are different, get some idea of how I see it functioning. But it's not simply particular emotions that are in conflict with each other. There are all sorts of different logics and thoughts and feelings and wants, needs, and desires. I have a concept. I say that discussing with yourself is normal. That's something we do all the time. We discuss with ourselves. Should I have tea or coffee? Should I have this snack? Should I have that? Etc., etc. We have every day. We have dozens, if not hundreds, of small discussions with ourselves, because every choice that we make, we gain things and we lose things. We cannot have everything and the opposite. Life isn't like that. So we need to make choices. So discussing with ourselves is normal. Arguing with ourselves is no problem. It's only when you lose the argument with yourself, then that's a problem. Now, what does that mean to lose an argument with yourself? Well, having an argument with yourself is where the outcome and the cost of the choice is important. Do you stay in a relationship? Do you leave a relationship? Do you buy a house? Do you not buy a house? Do you stay in this country? Do you go to another country? Those sorts of choices are important, and that's what I call having an argument with yourself, because the cost is difficult.
Unfortunately, for any number of reasons, we might end up making the wrong decision, and we suffer for that. That is what I call losing the argument with yourself.
Now, we have these types of discussions with ourselves often on the same level of logic. The level of logic, as I am about to explain, there are wants, needs, and desires. Desires are so basically in the head. If you have a look at the image, you can see that the head and the desires are on the same level. And that's what we fancy, what we'd like. And if we get it, it's very nice. And if we don't get it, well, it's no big deal. Our life doesn't depend on it. These are the easiest choices to make. And as I say, we make them every day. Our wants are more emotionally based. And it makes us feel good. It makes us feel wanted. It makes us feel loved. It makes us feel valorized. So this level is obviously much more important. And yes, do we go and see this person, or do we go and see that person, etc., etc. That's on the level of wants. of the discussions within ourselves. And then we have our needs. And that is food. Unfortunately, in our society, that includes money, which brings a lot of other needs into reality. So we have quite a lot of discussions within ourselves on these levels. Now, this is something that happens naturally. It happens within ourselves. And yes, sometimes it can be very problematical, and sometimes you need help. You need to discuss it with friends, you need to discuss it with family, maybe a counselor, maybe even a therapist. However, things get much, much more complicated when we have a discussion or dispute between our wants, needs, and desires, between the different levels. Now, when we have, for instance, I had a young patient not that long ago, very quiet, very careful, quite timid, very careful young man, but he wanted to be in a relationship. Makes sense. So his want and his desire was to be in a relationship. All very normal or very reasonable. However, the question then came about his apartment, because I knew from talking to him that he was very, very invested in his apartment. He had a small apartment, and for him it was perfect. Everything was straight, everything was tidy, everything was clean, everything was in its place. So the question then came into my mind was, where would this relationship live? And I've had another episode that I talk about living in 1, 2, or 3 different places for a couple, which is a whole other subject, which if you look through, you'll more than likely find, and if not, I'll be making it quite soon. So what happened, I asked him the question. I said, where do you expect this couple to live? And he said, well, I don't know what you mean. What sort of question is that? And will there a couple? We're a couple. I said, okay, where will you live? Will you invite your new girlfriend, it was heterosexual, to come and live with you in your apartment? And he looked at me as if I was totally insane, which a lot of my patients do fairly often, but that's not particularly important for the moment. And he said, no way. She can come and stay maybe a night or two. She can leave a toothbrush, but she's not going to come and live in my place. That would be just, I can't imagine that. I thought not. I said, so would you then be willing to give up your apartment and go and live with her in another apartment? And he said, oh, I'm not going to live in my apartment. My apartment's too invested. What happens if the relationship doesn't work or something? No, my apartment, I'm going to keep my apartment. So what we actually have found in that discussion, that his wants and his desire was to have a relationship, but his need was to keep his apartment and to keep his apartment for himself. And then I sort of explained that to him, and he said, does that mean, Mr. Gettle, that it's impossible for me to have a relationship? I said, no. What is important is that you realize that the relationship, which might be a need, but it's at the moment just a want. Maybe when he's actually in a relationship, it'll become a need. But for the moment, it's just a want. But your need is to keep your apartment. So what I would suggest is you look for a relationship which for some reason or other would work if you kept 2 different apartments. And he sort of looked at me and he shook his head and he went away. And the therapy continued for a period of time, and everything was going forward. He had a depression, he was going out of his depression, he was feeling much more positive, much more dynamic, which is why he started to think about getting to have a relationship. And then one week he came to me and said, Mr. Gettle, I found her. I said, who? Who have you found? I didn't know you'd lost anybody. He said, I found the woman. Now, one thing I hadn't mentioned, he was not very young, he was in his 30s. And so I said, well, what is this woman? What's so special about her? He said, she's divorced. And I said, is that a good thing? He said, yes, because she's got kids. And I thought, how is that a good thing? I mean, I asked the question. And he said, she has kids. She's keeping the apartment, which has got the apartment that she had when she was in a couple with her husband. The husband has moved out. She's got her apartment. It's the right size for her and for the kids. And she does not want to move out of her apartment. She's also not comfortable, especially not for the moment, for me to come and live in the apartment. So it means that she has her apartment with her kids, and I have my apartment, and yet we're a couple. And that is responding to his wants, needs, and desires, which were in conflict. So this very short little reflection is for you to think about what you want, what you need, and what you desire, and to reflect on whether the wants, needs, and desires are harmonious with themselves. And if they're not, at least not when you on first reflection, is how you could possibly find something which is an unusual solution, possibly, but looking for this unusual solution because you realize you need an unusual solution to respond to those wants, needs, and desires. One of the most usual thing that I find is people that don't want to continue with their jobs because they have other things that they want to do that's important for them. They need to work, they need to earn money, and yet what they want to do is not their job. And then the reflection comes about, how can you continue to fill those needs of earning enough money to survive, at least in a relatively comfortable way, and how can you fulfill those wants? And it's these sorts of reflections that people need to have by separating their desires, their wants, and their needs into separate categories and reflect on each one of them. And it's nice from time to time to have your wishes and your desires and your fantasies come true. Of course, it's nice. That sort of makes us really happy. But it's really important that we can separate these three levels in our lives. See what is really a need. But because it's a need doesn't necessarily mean we have to leave it the same way that it is. There are many people that have not been happy in their work, and they found another way to earn money, which has fulfilled the need to earn a living. It's not rocket science. It's not an impossible idea. But just allow yourselves to reflect on these different levels of where you're at in your life, what is important for you, on which levels, what are in conflict with each other. And with that, at least awareness of these conflicts, you can start to think about solutions that you can find. There you are. Small reflection for you. I hope it's useful. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to leave me a message. I'll try and respond. At some point, I'm going to start to do individual therapy sessions by Zoom, so keep that in mind. Yes, like and subscribe and do all these things that everybody keeps asking you to do. It would be nice to have more than like 4 or 5 subscriptions. It might help me keep going. I do everything myself for the moment. The video, the sound, the bookcase, everything like that. So anything you can do to help and support me, I very much appreciate. So until the next time, this is Gary. Bye for now.